Now, as we continue to see the effects of imperialism in real time, overnight, well, that depends on your time zone, the United States president announced that they will be taking charge through the interim government that comes in Venezuela, and will be taking out about 30 to 50 million barrels of Venezuelan oil. And that, in fact, the United States president himself will be taking charge of the control of the proceeds that come out from the sale of that quote-unquote sanctioned oil. Now, this has left people so confused as to whether the war was against drugs or the war was for Venezuelan oil. Lucky for us, we've got Shahid Bolsen, who tries to explain for us the Venezuelan oil, and the full link to the video will be down in the description. Take a look.
So I don't personally have an opinion about Maduro. I know that the Venezuelan people have varying opinions about him. The opinion is relatively divided. I know that the people of Venezuela have suffered tremendously for decades, primarily because of U.S. sabotage and U.S. hostility and so forth. And I have no reason to suppose that Maduro wasn't involved or isn't involved in one way or another with the drug cartels. Probably was. There's nothing unique about that. So is the U.S. The United States has relentlessly interfered in the domestic politics of Venezuela my entire life and before my life. Venezuela and every other country in the Western Hemisphere for over a century. Obviously, what the U.S. did is flagrantly illegal. Obviously, that's not even interesting. They're an outlaw country. That's not an opinion. That's a fact. It's not even an interesting observation at this point. It's like if you find out that Jeffrey Dahmer was also a shoplifter. Who cares? We know this already. America is a completely renegade nation, a rogue state, and always has been, especially in the Western Hemisphere, especially in Central and South America. But the problem is, with regards to Venezuela, if you restate history, if you recite the catalog of U.S. crimes in Central and South America, and you contain the kidnapping of Maduro exclusively within this context, then I think that you will misunderstand what's happening. If you're only looking at it as part of the history, because it looks like, if you do it that way, it looks like the perpetuation of the same pattern, right? It looks like same old, same old. It's just, there they go again. There America goes again. I think it was even done on the anniversary of the U.S. invasion of Panama and the arrest of Manuel Noriega. So it looks like, from the outside, apparently, it looks like the U.S. is just continuing as they always have. But this is a mirage, in my opinion. Understand, the U.S. is like a former boxing champion who has had to start to inject himself with a whole cocktail of hormones and a whole cocktail of drugs just to keep up the appearances that he's still a champion. Now they have to pay opponents to take a dive. It's been a very long time since that fighter ever knocked anyone out in a real fight. So when you only contextualize the U.S. actions by their historical behavior only, I think that you can overlook what has changed. And it's incredibly important to look at what has changed. I mean, first of all, let's get a few things clear right from the start. The Trump administration, like I've said many, many times, is fully aligned with the national OCGFC, not with the military-industrial complex. If you look at it, every single thing that Trump has done in his term has done nothing but boost American isolation, American withdrawal. It's boosted BRICS, it's boosted China, it's boosted Russia, it's boosted BRICS, it's boosted multipolarity, because that's his job. He's a Khaliji president, like I've said many times, And if your analysis of geopolitics starts from a position of, for example, validating the idea that there's a fundamental power conflict between the U.S. and between the U.S. and China, then quite simply you have no idea what's going on. The ascendancy of the national OCGFC completely changes the context of how international relations works in the modern era. We're no longer talking about friction and competition between nation states. We're not talking about that being the driver of everything that happens anymore. That era is past. We're in an era of coordination and management, which is very often being obscured. It's very often being obscured, or it's being performed via a sort of interface of those old mechanisms of friction. You know what I mean? You understand me? Like everyone is used to the 20th century paradigms, right? Everyone is used to that. Everyone is used to state against state competition for resources and for power and so on. Nation states. Nation states as the sort of main characters in the global story, as the protagonists and as the antagonists. And we all fight. So that continues to be the interface. That's the user-friendly language. But that's no longer the operating system. That's no longer the operating code. This is unprecedented coordination that we're talking about, multilateral coordination. And that's because the Western and the American private sector, as I've said again many times, has transcended national attachments. They're a-national, a floating imperial network. I'm not saying that we are talking about a shadowy cabal of overlords. That's not what I'm talking about. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's just a complex set of global actors, non-state actors, private sector actors, pursuing the stability of their interests and coordinating with each other to do that. It's not conspiratorial at all. I mean, the way people think about it. They coordinate necessarily also with the actual states like China, Russia, Saudi Arabia, and so on, states in which the government is completely integrated with national business interests and vice versa. So let's try to go through what the actual architecture is of what's being constructed right now in Venezuela, or where Venezuela fits in the architecture globally, and why every single actor who's involved, from Washington to Riyadh to Moscow to Beijing, is actually perfectly aligned in delivering this thing, in my opinion, what they're trying to do with Venezuela. First, the baseline reality that forces anything else and everything else. American energy consumption is about to explode, right? We're talking about AI data centers in America that are currently eating about 2 to 3% of U.S. electricity, and that's projected to hit, I think, 8% by 2030. Just data center energy consumption in America right now is higher than the individual energy consumption of over 100 countries in the world. You understand me? That's just data centers, and that's going to double, more than double, in the next 4 years. We're talking about EV charging infrastructure that's going to require grid expansion. It's going to require a grid expansion that's equivalent to 20 million homes. That's like adding 20 million homes to the system. Okay, we're talking about reshored manufacturing, chips, batteries, defense production, probably even auto manufacturing and so forth. All of this demands industrial scale power at levels that we haven't seen since the 1990s in the United States. The American grid cannot support this. Very simply, it cannot. Now, the traditional American solution would be drill, baby, drill, right? Frack more, burn more coal, but that's simply not possible. You know, even fracking, right? There's no way that fracking can scale fast enough for what's needed, for what's coming. They can't scale fast enough for what's coming, for the needs that are coming. Not to mention high energy prices would completely kill the consumption-dependent growth model that's really the only thing keeping the American economy from completely imploding right now. So that's not really an option. So what to do? Well, you need massive cheap oil supplies injected into the global markets. You need prices suppressed sustainably below $60 a barrel. You need enough supply to fuel an American consumption boom, because that's what you need. And that's where Venezuelan heavy crude comes in my opinion. But here's what everyone is missing about Venezuela. Everyone is talking about American companies going to Venezuela and taking over. It's not profitable for American oil companies. You understand me? Let me say that again. For those people who think that this is just 2003 Iraq all over again, and they're just going in to get the oil. Look, Venezuelan oil infrastructure reconstruction is not profitable for American companies at all. The capital expenditure that would be required is completely insane. We're talking about $200 billion plus over a decade just to restore production capacity after years and years of sanctions. That decayed their whole infrastructure in Venezuela. Venezuelan heavy crude is expensive to extract, and it's expensive and it requires a specialized refining infrastructure. But this is a very expensive undertaking. At current and projected prices, break even is going to be around somewhere between $40 to $50 per barrel. And that's competing directly with American companies' own domestic shale production, where they've already sunk a tremendous amount of capital. Not to mention their operations in Canada, which is where most of the American companies went. Most of the foreign companies went to places like Canada when Venezuela was nationalized. They've already sunk a lot of money into that. Meanwhile, we've got shareholders who want returns on a regular basis, and they're not interested in nation-building projects in South America. The financials just doesn't work. Wall Street's not going to fund it. American oil companies are going to make token bids for political cover to make it look good, to placate Trump and so forth. But then they'll quietly withdraw, in my opinion. You don't understand. Oil companies are incredibly good, incredibly politically skilled, diplomatically skilled. They're a-national actors. But here's what American companies can survive on. Not the oil directly, but service contracts. They don't need to own the oil. They just need to get paid to extract it, to refine it, and to move it. That's the Halliburton model, and Halliburton's already been mentioned with regards to Venezuela. Provide services globally, regardless of who owns the production. They're already doing it for Saudi Aramco, for ADNOC, for everyone else. So when Chevron or Occidental's name appears on a Venezuela deal, check the fine print. And those names have already been mentioned. Who's providing the capital? What's the joint venture structure? Check the offtake agreements. The devil's in the details, because if anyone can survive on Venezuelan oil economics, I can't think of anyone better than the GCC. Saudi Arabia and the UAE can produce oil at $2 to $10 per barrel and still make a profit. Listen to that again, $2 to $10 per barrel. They can operate Venezuelan oil fields at a loss, okay, for years and still be profitable. They can still be profitable overall because they're using it as a weapon against their competitors. You understand? They can absorb massive upfront capital expenditure, massive injections of investment, because sovereign wealth funds, unlike corporations, they measure their returns in decades, not in financial quarters. Not to mention, they've already built the specialized refining infrastructure for heavy crude. It exists in Jeddah. It exists in Texas, which is owned by Saudi Arabia, that refinery. They're coordinating through China with BRICS energy architecture, which means that Venezuelan oil could potentially, or Venezuelan crude could potentially flow through Gulf intermediaries to their refineries, to Chinese refineries, bypassing Western financial systems entirely if they want to. This isn't theoretical. They can do this. The infrastructure already exists. The relationships already exist. Obviously the financing capacity exists. What doesn't exist is American corporate capacity to do this themselves profitably. American companies can't do this. So how does this actually play out? I mean, no one knows. It's kind of thrown me for a loop the last few days. No one actually knows how this is going to play out except for the players who are actually involved. But you can imagine. You can imagine, for example, that Chevron, say, gets announced as the lead contractor in Venezuela since they're already there, or Occidental, you know, maybe it's going to be a consortium. So you get the headlines. Trump wants the headlines. American companies return to Venezuela. We've got the oil. Trump tweets about, you know, American energy dominance and what have you. CNN runs segments about how regime change delivered benefits to U.S. corporations and jobs and whatnot and so on. This is the narrative that they can run with. But I would guess that if you look at the actual structure, and I mean actually look at the SEC filings, for example, the joint venture agreements, the financing sources, the real story is probably going to look very different if you really look into it. It's more likely to be U.S. companies provide technical expertise. Maybe Chinese companies provide infrastructure. That's what they're very good at. And of course, the Gulf provides the money, either directly or through firms or funds that they control. The offtake agreements could structure oil sales through Gulf trading entities. You understand? U.S. companies will get paid service fees, not commodity margins. Now, this may not be what happens. It may not be what happens, but this is what makes the most sense to me. That's the only sense that I can make of it. And then the actual ownership of the oil flows gets obscured thoroughly enough through corporate complexity that by the time anyone figures it out, it's a fait accompli. Because like I said, if you understand who Trump actually is and who he actually represents and who he actually serves, Trump represents and serves the A National OCGFC. Every single move that he's made, and I mean every single one, serves this constituency, not American national interest.
What do you guys think? Share your thoughts and opinions in the comment section below. Let's have a proper discussion about this. Also, give this video a thumbs up if you liked it and subscribe for more videos like this. Until next time, peace out.